Hey sleepers, it's your favorite host, Dirty Jobs Mike, and I'm here to tell you about PristineAuction.com. This site literally has everything you need to deck out your man or woman cave with every single sporting item you can think of. Signed helmet? They've got them. Signed jersey? They got those too. And they're all certified authentic. And they got them cheap, boys and girls, with daily auctions for your chance to win. Just make sure you drop the promo code SLEEPER so they can toss you an extra $5 off of your first order. Remember, that's Pristine Auction, Pristine auction.com.
Welcome to the Sleeper Wire Show. It is week 5 in the 2019 fantasy season. About a quarter of the way through the season with some decent data on all the teams. We got 4 weeks in. A little bit bigger than a small sample size. We've been watching the trends. But, you know, things change every week. So if you could magically do a redraft of your team right now, within reason, for the rest of the season, who would you want if you had to start, let's say, you start the season 4-0, or you start at 500, 2-2, or maybe you're starting with a handicap 0-4. Who are you picking for the rest of the season? We're going to do that today. So we did a mock draft with users from the Sleeper app, and we hope this will give you some insight into who we think will be consistent, who we think had their best games of the season already, and who has yet to reach the full potential with the most upside. My name is Producer Steve. You can find me on the Sleeper app at SWSteve and on Twitter at Toledo Radio. With me again, Jason. You can find him on the Sleeper app at BFTG Dr. Mill. It's DRMIL. And on Twitter at FLD Dr. Milbarge, DRMILBARGE. And off the pup list, ready to perform, not out there as a decoy. Max is back at Sleeper Wire, at SWMax on Sleeper, and Max SW23 on Twitter, I think. I don't know.
I think it's just Max SW.
Max SW, maybe? I don't know. Tweet at him. Tweet at somebody named Max. Maybe you'll get a response about fantasy. Maybe you'll get a D pick. I don't know. We're going to talk about this mock draft we did. So first of all, guys, thanks for being on the show again Monday. I don't know how we're all doing. Like, I think in terms of record, I'm not in great shape, but not in horrible shape. I'm kind of like the 500 team. Jason, how are you doing so far this year with your teams?
So overall, I'm in good shape. I'm in 3-1 in 7 out of my 10. It hurts my money league. I'm 1-3.
All right, Max, how you doing this year? I'm afraid to ask.
Well, I mean, I'd say about 50-50. I'm only in 5 leagues this year. I have 1 league where I'm 4-0. I have 2 leagues where I'm 1-3, and then I have 2 leagues where I'm 2-2. So not terrible. Definitely not where I want to be or where I thought I was going to be.
Right. Okay. So if you're out there and you're having a rough season to start so far, maybe you're 0-4, 1-3, somewhere around there, you're going to have to listen to some of these changes that we did in this mock draft. Like, some of these guys went up and down. And look for the guys that are going to get you maybe some temporary upside so that you can get back over 500. If you're 4-0 to start with, you're going to be looking for guys that we're talking about who are consistent, who are going to carry you through the rest of the season. We like their workload. We like their target share. We like their consistency, their efficiency. And then if you're in the dumps 0-4, well, now you're going to have to make some changes. So who are the guys that can make a difference if you can buy them? They might be expensive, but it might be worth it in the long run just to get back into contention. So let's go ahead and look at this draft. We had a couple of users. We had D. Pirelli, Mr. Logan, Isobar. Jason was in there, KC1324, K Grad 13, George from the Breaking from the Grind podcast, myself, and Chris Geckel, and then 3 bozos who dropped out early. Thanks, bozos. So those teams, the bozo teams, I don't know how much value, but we'll read through them anyway. So let's start with Jason. Let's talk about your team first. So you started off with and this, by the way, is 12-team PPR. You started off with Devontae Adams, and then you went running back, wide receiver. You waited on quarterback pretty far. Anything in your team that you were surprised moved around since the beginning of the season till now?
So for me, it's Derrick Henry. He was on the do not touch list for me unless he fell pretty far. Uh, he's had he's been very consistent all year. I think he's running back one so far this year. But he's consistent week in and week out. He's getting you double digit points. You can rely on him. And he's a guy that's like anchoring this team as far as points.
Just talking about the team in general, Tennessee, I don't know what to make of them week to week. So if you didn't have Derrick Henry on your team right now, are you thinking of buying him? The price is probably going to be medium to high if people see him the way you do. Like, would you go out if you were having a rough time? Would you go out and buy this guy?
It's hard to buy him because he hasn't had a down week yet. So
Right.
I've tried in a couple leagues to get him. I think he's going to be consistent throughout the rest of the year. I have Saquon in a couple leagues, and those are the couple leagues where I'm not doing very well. So I'm trying to sell Saquon to a Derrick Henry owner and see what else I'd have to throw in. And it's sad you have to throw something else in. But right now, with Saquon potentially missing time until the playoffs, if I'm 1-3, I'm looking at selling a guy who's probably not going to help me until the playoffs if I make it. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do I'm trying to get somebody like Derrick Henry for a guy who may not come back to the playoffs.
Okay. If you look at your team and you say, was there a point where you went, okay, these are all consistent. Now I'm going to start taking some upside players. Is there a round where we can peg where you switched?
Well, so 8th round for sure. Well, 7th round, the last running back I really liked was Rashad Penny. And Chris Carson had a good week this week, but he's had a couple down weeks. He's had some fumbles. Rashad Penny's supposed to be back for Thursday night's game. I'd like to see him going forward. He's probably going to get some more touches. I like that. But then I went Marquise Brown, Mecole Hardman, Darrell Williams, and after I picked a quarterback, John Ross. So that stretch there, starting in the 8th round, I was Marquise Brown's a big play upside guy. Mecole Hardman's a big play upside guy. Darrell Williams had more touches than McCoy this week. He's a sneaky pickup, and John Ross can be a big play guy with a lot of targets so far this year. So round 8 is where I started swinging for the fences.
All right, so your starters are pretty well consistent. Then you got a lot of upside on your bench. So this would be a pretty good model of players to look for if you're kind of 500 or maybe you've got some depth and you can trade for some of these upside guys for later in the year. Last thing I want to ask you, you went 6th round. You went with Austin Hooper as your tight end, which if we looked at the beginning of the season, he was either undrafted or very, very late. Why'd you go with Austin Hooper? I know he's been good, but what are you seeing from him that made you feel comfortable pulling him in the 6th round?
Well, so I looked at what was behind him. O.J. Howard's been inconsistent. Delaney Walker has played well, but had a bad week this week. He's older, and that's a team that has their struggles passing the ball. Hawkinson's hot and cold because he's a rookie. Will Disley is the only one there who's had huge upside. So I just looked at what was after Austin Hooper and said, give me a guy who's, again, it's a consistency thing, right? I want some points, a decent amount of points from my tight end. I don't have to win the league with Austin Hooper. I just don't want to end up with a donut.
Right. I'll tell you who else is behind Austin Hooper this week was Christian Kirk. I'm a little concerned, and Christian Kirk is a buy low for me this week also because the target, he's just target vacuum, Austin Hooper. You might as well call him Austin Hoover. He's a target vacuum, and Christian Kirk, I'm sorry, not Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley. I misspoke. Calvin Ridley is the one that seems to be suffering there. Max, anything you see in Jason's team that you strongly disagree with or really like?
I don't like Austin Hooper straight off the bat, and that is I just don't trust an Atlanta tight end, not since Tony Gonzalez. Your running backs, to me, are kind of weak. I know you went for Devontae Adams, Cooks, Fitzgerald. It looks like you were more focused on locking down that number one wide receiver, which is good. But at the same time, your second wide receiver being Brandon Cooks is a boomer bust. Fitz is solid, so I do like that. Your running backs are kind of weak. Kieran Johnson, Derrick Henry. I love it, Derrick Henry. Kieran, I don't trust any Lions running back. And second round, Mark Ingram, Josh Jacobs, Barkley. Fournette was still there. I probably would have grabbed Fournette because the way the Jags are playing now.
So carry on to me. Second week in a row, he's got 20-plus touches. Every time he gets 20-plus touches, to me, he's just looking better and better. I think he's an upside guy now that they're actually using him the way after they got rid of C.J. Anderson, they started using him the way I think they should have. And I think it's only going to get better for him. So for me, it's an upside play knowing that I was going to come back and grab Henry and have that steady presence.
Which I do understand. But that being said, like me and you both agree, we both love Rashad Penny. I think he may eventually become the starter for Seattle. But I think he's a low floor, if that makes sense. Like Kieran Johnson, could he be an RB1 any given week? He could be. That being said, I view him as a higher RB3 until I have to get more than 2 weeks of work. Detroit has had running backs like this where they look fantastic, and then they just decide they no longer want to use them. Leonard Fournette is on a team that wants him to be a number one. And with the emergence of Minshew Magic, Fournette's getting the work, the defense is pulling back, the run game is opening up. I probably would have reached for Fournette, personally.
Okay. All right. So rest of season, you like Fournette a little bit more than KJ.
It's most of the team and the way the offense is run.
Okay. All right, so that's some insight into if you're looking at one of those RB2. Well, I would call them probably both RB2, RB3s at this point in the season. Guys that you may be able to trade for. You know, they're not top level names, but they're nice pieces. Maybe if you want something a little consistent with some growth potential, with some upside later on in the season. Max, is there a team on here that you particularly think was well drafted? I mean, you can just adopt that team and talk about it if you want.
Puts a smile on my face. All right, so I mentioned this to you guys before, and it's going to be Mr. Logan's team. Drafting Alvin Kamara second overall. I love it. Even though Dalvin Cook was still on the board, I honestly would have gone with Cook. Minnesota, unless they can get Cook going, they're terrible, and they want to get Cook going. But you can't complain with Alvin Kamara. Let's be serious. So I got Alvin Kamara in the first, Barkley in the second. Barkley's injured, but I love it. Third round, Leonard Fournette. Hey, that's the replacement for Barkley until he's back. Fantastic. Fourth round, you scoop Alshon Jeffrey, who's a consistent wide receiver too. Perfectly fine with that. Then, for a flex, you pick up Devonta Freeman. Another perfect flex, solid RB2 in case Fournette gets hurt, because he does have a history. A.J. Green in the sixth round. Yeah, A.J. Green in the sixth round. Still injured, but when he comes back, almost instant wide receiver one. Tevin Coleman, take it or leave the seventh round pick. But another pick I really like is the eighth round. Golden Tate, coming off suspension. The Giants' offense is starting to look good. The veteran will be the primary target there. He's the most skilled wide receiver there. It's great. He's going to be a great filler until A.J. Green's back. Russell Wilson at Q. And then just the scraps at the end. I mean, it's just a solid starting team. I want to say his name wrong, but Herndon. I don't know why I say Hendron. It's like dyslexia.
Some of us say Geis, and some of us say Guis. Mike Darling, Dirty Jobs.
Herndon's a good tight end coming off suspension. You got Vance McDonald. Not the biggest fan of Vance McDonald, with Vanette being in Pittsburgh now, but you guys know me. Tight ends are disposable. But I love this. Locking down a solid running back core, to me, the way this season specifically has shaped up is exactly what you want to do. And honestly, the number one and number two, or number two and number three running backs in the league between Kamara and Barkley on your team, fantastic. Leonard Fournette's really starting to come into his own. I love it. The wide receivers, once AJ Green's healthy, you're good as gold.
Well, let me ask you about that. Okay, so if you're in the market to buy, if you're looking at this team or these players and saying, man, I'd love to have one of those guys to turn my season around, Kamara's obviously going to be the most expensive, probably followed by Barkley, but that injury thing kind of worries me. Fournette coming off a big week, his price tag just went up. I think his window to buy was before this week. But in terms of wide receiver, I mean, Alshon, AJ Green, Golden Tate, I think you can get most of them at a decent price, and you feel like those three can carry you through the rest of the season, or say you're 0-4, can those guys help turn your season around, get you maybe 2-3 wins in the next 4 weeks?
So if you're 0-4 and your wide receivers, like let's say you drafted Amari Cooper, right?
Let's say you had Hopkins. I mean, say you went Hopkins in the first round and he's not doing you much.
Well, I'd still stick with Hopkins, but I'm saying, say you have Amari Cooper or Hopkins as your number one, and you kind of punted your second wide receiver, and you're worried now. Yeah, I'd go after Alshon Jeffrey. I'd be perfectly comfortable with him as a wide receiver too. Or if I had two wide receiver twos, I'd be fine with that.
What if you had like Diggs or Thielen? People are panicking about Thielen. I don't think it's necessarily.
I wouldn't worry about Thielen even a little bit. If I had Diggs, I mean, Diggs would be a hard sell to get Alshon right now. When AJ Green's back, if this team had Golden Tate and AJ Green, or Diggs has a big week, you might be able to pitch that. But Diggs has been way too inconsistent. But I would be happier with Alshon than I would with Diggs.
Yeah, so to me, this team
run better.
This team is a one of those teams. If you're 3-1, 4-0, right?
Yeah,
it's got Barkley, so he may not be back to the playoffs. He's definitely not back for at least 4 more weeks. So you have to rely on waiting for him. So you can take a loss or two, or you're starting out Kamara, Fournette, and Freeman. AJ Green's got a couple weeks. They keep saying, anytime now, but it's a couple weeks away. You haven't seen Golden Tate in this offense. He should be good, but he hasn't been with the team, so he hasn't been able to practice with Daniel Jones. So to me, this is a team that over time is going to get right. So if you started out strong, that's what this team is. You're willing to eat a couple losses waiting on Saquon Barkley, waiting on AJ Green.
Yeah, I mean, if I think Steve's trying to get players off this team. For me, I'd probably target Devonta Freeman, and I would offer Sutton, maybe. Because Cortland Sutton is having a fantastic little season. And, AJ's hurt, Golden Tate's hurt, so all you have right now is Alshon Jeffrey, or Golden Tate's out. You don't know how Golden Tate's going to do. So you have Alshon Jeffrey and Humphreys are essentially your two starters. And I say, hey, Sutton's putting up, on average 15 points a week in a full-point PPR. You might want to give me Devonta Freeman, who isn't having the best year, but he's still having a very productive RB2 year. Right. Now, you might even be able to swing Sutton into Leonard Fournette if you can convince them of the injury history, the inconsistency history.
Yeah. Freeman is a tough one for me. He's a tough buy for me just because there's something up with the Falcons. So you have faith that they can figure it out. I don't know if it looks like if it's a coaching issue or it's I don't know what it is, but they just don't look as explosive as we expected.
I think what the Falcons tried to do was have one running back and they can't. I think this week kind of showed that. Devonta Freeman actually did work through the air, which was pretty nice.
Right.
And Ito Smith looks good. I added him in a couple leagues, and I have him on waivers. But Freeman, he's a very productive running back. They use him a lot. So, like I said, if I'm trading a receiver who's now probably my number 2 or 3 receiver that I got off the waiver wire, like Sutton's a strong piece to have.
Yeah.
But if I can upgrade my running back game, like if I drafted Duke Johnson in the 3rd, thinking he'd be my starter, and I can trade Sutton to get Devonta Freeman, or maybe even Fournette, I'd do that. Because I think Freeman and Fournette, the running backs are so thin in the league that you need to acquire as much as you can of the guys who are actually starting.
That's funny you mentioned that too, because as we were doing this draft, after the first 4 or 5 rounds, I should say, I mean, you're really, really digging in that list for running back talent. Anything at all. Jason, was there any players that surprised you at how high they went, whereas maybe they were low draft or late rounds or not drafted at all, and any guys that you were just amazed that fell so far and drafted so late who you thought before the season started these guys are for sure going to be good?
So the first guy was Darren Waller. George took him at BFTGEO. George took him at 4-4. I mean, he deserves it the way he's been playing. This is a draft based on what we know now. I think he's going to be good going forward, but it still is a shock to the system to see Darren Waller go in the fourth round.
Yeah, I mean he went after Kelsey and Ertz before Evan Ingram and Mark Andrews. That whole fourth round, and 2 rounds before Kittle.
And that was going to be the one that surprised me. He went as late as he did.
Yeah.
Now, Waller surprised me. Mark Andrews kind of surprised me, although he's been a target machine. I would have taken Evan Ingram ahead of both of those tight ends. George Kittle, he's had his bye already. He hasn't looked bad. He's been targeted. He's had a couple touchdowns called back on ticky-tack penalties. Like, I think it's right around the corner for Kittle. So I see him as a solid play going forward, and I do like that he's past his bye now. So you've got a guy who doesn't, unless he gets hurt, is not going to be off the field for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Kittle's on my buy list right now, actually. And, if you can sell tight end Waller for Kittle, that I'm okay with that. Like, in terms of rest of season potential, I know you've been riding Waller, and he's been very solid. But I think Kittle has a slight athletic advantage over him. And I wouldn't, if I were in need of a little upside, and I'm willing to give up some consistency, I would make that trade if my record wasn't so great, I think.
Well, that also goes, I don't trust Oakland going forward. They've been okay so far, but I don't trust a John Gruden coached offense.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing he has going for him is how there's no playmakers there. It's compact. So you've got Waller, you've got Williams, you've got Josh Jacobs, and that's basically 80% of that offense, right?
Right.
So that's what Waller has going for him. Whereas Kittle, there's a lot of targets there that takes away from him. But just the athletic ability alone puts Kittle over the top for me, and part of that is just preseason bias. It's like I said, when I saw Waller go off in the fourth round, it was a shock. But then you start going over your notes of who's performed where, and that's why he's there.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins went 1-7, but if he continues on this pace the rest of the year, he's not a first round guy next year, even though he's DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
So name
helpful,
has a little bit, you know what I mean? Name is a lot here because Julio Jones has outperformed him, but he went a couple players later. Michael Thomas has outperformed him, but he's gone a couple players later. So even in a draft where we've got a quarter of the season in, we're unwilling to give up some of our preseason notions.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too. You have to think when you're looking at these players, and especially guys you want to buy if you need talent and you need upside. The name, Hopkins is an exciting name. Ooh, if I could trade for DeAndre Hopkins, how cool would that be to have him on my team? But the Houston Texans have not been doing a good job blocking for Deshaun Watson. He ate a lot of dirt again this week. And I'm every week I question the coaching. So I'm looking at the team itself and I'm thinking, can this improve? Can they get it right? Like this week they ran the ball a lot. They hadn't been doing that. Duke Johnson got a lot of work this week. So I don't know what to expect every week from certain teams. I don't know what to expect every week from the Texans. I don't know what to expect week to week from the freaking Bucks. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. The Eagles sometimes confuse me. The Falcons are confusing me. The Titans are confusing me. So some of these teams I want to kind of stay away from if I'm risk averse. I know they have good players, but at the same time, they could go off on a week and then let me down on a week. And if I'm in a precarious situation with my record, I can't screw around. I need to win.
Yeah, but that being said, though, Hopkins and the Texans, no one's injured besides their running back, and the history is there. So when we're talking about teams like, yes, a lot of teams are very strange this season. A lot of odd things are happening, especially with these ticky-tack calls. I feel like the officiating is actually worse this year than I've seen in a long time. But Hopkins still goes that high because Watson's still there. Hopkins is still there. I wouldn't expect them to get worse.
Right. But I mean, if I have a good record I'm going to the Hopkins owner and saying, look, he's not doing any favors. Let me give you somebody who's consistent week to week. I'll take on the risk of Hopkins and the Texans with the hope that everything turns itself around. Let me give you Julio. Let me give you Mike Evans or somebody. Or let me give you Keenan Allen. I mean, I don't even think I'd make that trade. But
I'm telling you right now, if I was the Hopkins owner and I had a losing season, I'd say no because I need that explosive potential.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's good to have both sides of thought there. Max, anybody in this draft pop out at you in terms of like, wow, I can't imagine how he got so high, or how I can't imagine how far he's fallen.
Yeah. So Chris Carson going third round. I don't like very last pick in the third round, but with all of the fumbles he's had and the inconsistencies, I don't think he's long for his job. Personally, Philip Lindsay was still there, McCoy's still there, Montgomery, Austin Eckler, Freeman's still there. I wouldn't have gone for Carson there. Just based off what he's done, I bet that if Rashad Penny was not injured this week, Chris Carson would have lost his job.
Interesting. Yeah, I liked Penny preseason as a late round pick over Carson because I kind of felt like injury maybe, or maybe like you're saying, just problems. He could have lost his job. Penny was going to be the guy there. I still think it could happen later in the season. It's very possible. So is Carson then, if you're a Carson owner at this time, he probably just had the best game of so far. He's a sell for you then, right?
100% sell.
Okay.
I would genuinely wouldn't even think about it. I'd sell.
All right. Let me go over my team real quick here. I drafted with the idea of I was going for workload. I was going for amount of opportunity. So I took Le'Veon Bell, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, T.Y. Hilton in my first four. I figure all those guys, are getting a lot of usage. And for me, that's kind of what I go for. I try to look at a lot of usage because there's just more potential to score points there. It's not always there every week. But again, this is a team that I think could go off at any given week. Austin Eckler, I think he'll still have some work. I took Royce Freeman because I think he is the better running back there. I think when it comes down at the end of the season, I think he might be more touchdowns than Philip Lindsay. And then I kind of ran out of running backs, so I took Tariq Cohen. He's an upside. I grabbed Terry McLaurin in the 8th, Curtis Samuel in the 9th, Geis and Alexander Madison, so some backups there. And then I punted on tight end, got Greg Olsen, Noah Fant, and I last round pick Baker Mayfield. So for me, this is a team that's very much 50-50. What do you call it? 500, 2-2, maybe 3-1, 1-3, somewhere in there, with good potential to stay strong throughout the season. Guys, are there any players here that you think are destined to just fall off or have already had their best game of the season?
So Royce Freeman's tough for me, and not because I don't think he's more talented. I think he's obviously physically more gifted. The problem is they split those carries 50-50 down the middle every single game. So that's the only reason it's tough for me. It's hard to pick either one of those guys because if you took one of those guys away, you'd have a productive running back.
Right.
But, getting half the points every week that you could get, that's what hurts. Geis, I don't know if he comes back this year. Even if he does, who knows? I like Geis for his talent. I worry about Geis because, 2 seasons, 2 injuries to take him out of large, last year, all season, this year, large stretch of this year. Who knows if he's ever going to be right? So that's a little tough. I mean, running back got away from you a little bit.
Yeah.
I love Austin Eckler in the 5th round. He has a defined role, whether or not Melvin Gordon's there. Last year, Melvin Gordon owners would tell you third downs, Eckler's on the field. Inside the 20, a lot of times, Eckler's on the field. So he has a well-defined role. So I love him in the 5th round, especially as well as he's been playing, because who knows what kind of shape Gordon's in when he actually plays this week. So I do like Eckler there, but you had a tough go at running back after you took Le'Veon Bell because you went Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, and T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
So you got to hope the volume from those guys carries you through.
Right.
I truly think the volume from those guys will carry you through, though. Tyler Lockett's really coming to his own. Brissett's looking good with T.Y., and Keenan Allen's Keenan Allen. That being said, though, don't be shocked if Melvin Gordon only plays 2 games for the Chargers.
Real okay. Talk to me about this.
My theory is Melvin Gordon goes through a hissy fit. Teams do not like that. The Chargers did not bend, did not cave. Austin Eckler's very young. They have a rookie in Jackson who's also very good. Wouldn't you want to just show that the headache can do his job really well and get rid of him?
So you think they give him a couple of games and then trade him away?
Give him a couple games and ship him out. And there are teams who could use him.
Steve, going back to your team, one guy I neglected to mention is picking up McLaren in the 8th. That was honestly, I was hoping.
I wish you didn't take my pick.
Back,
I was 2 players. Come on, man.
Yeah, McLaren in the 8th. That was a stroke of genius. The tough part is, can you get all those wide receivers on the field at once?
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. Well, in a 2 flex, I mean, if it's a 2 flex PPR, I'm okay starting Allen, Lockett, Hilton, and McLaren. Like, that's a solid floor every week, I think.
I wouldn't start McLaren yet.
No, yeah, okay. You want to see who's quarterback, of course.
I want to see who's quarterback. I want to see if Haskins steps up because I know everyone hates Keenum, but both quarterbacks played horribly that game. In case Keenum's proven that he gets the ball to him, so I want to see how that works out.
Okay, let's look. I want to do one more thing here. Let's look at like round 10 through 14. And this is who people would be stashing. This is, remember, they're drafting again 4 weeks in. They're drafting a new team basically based on whatever they think they saw, whatever they feel is coming up. So who are we stashing here from round 10 through the end? Who do you think is a really good stash for the rest of the season? I was really surprised to see Robbie Anderson down there. I was surprised to see Carlos Hyde down there. I feel like he could be very usable still. MVS. Any names pop out to you in the last 4 rounds that you think, wow, I should grab these guys or trade for them on the cheap for later?
So you're not going to get them for the cheap, but Darrell Williams coming in the 10th round, that's a really strong pick.
He's still on a bunch of waiver wire.
If he's still available places, teams should be grabbing him because he looks great. And Andy Reid loves Sean McCoy, and I think you might see this duo going forward. Hurts my heart to say it, but I think that's what's going to be KC's play.
You think Damian Williams is out on the street?
Damian Williams, his usage dropped substantially with LaShawn McCoy. LaShawn McCoy is putting up fantastic numbers for a man his age, and the workload split is working for KC. Darrell Williams is playing great, a great spell back, or like basically the monster back for LaShawn McCoy. I think that's a great ad, and I definitely do it. That, and I already mentioned it earlier, Ito Smith. I'm not sure if that was on the show or if that was just us talking before the show. But having Ito Smith, Freeman, he's injury prone at this point in his career. 100% injury prone. And Ito Smith is showing that he can be the solid number 2 and potentially the replacement for Freeman in the future, or if Freeman goes down. And him getting picked up in the 12th round as a stash is fantastic, especially if you're the Freeman owner.
So he wasn't drafted in this. I'm looking, and if we're looking for a guy for this week specifically, Dexter Williams is 0% owned. Jamal Williams is not likely to play this week, and I don't think they're going to want to run Aaron Jones exclusively. So he's a sneaky ad for me this week.
Okay. All right. Anybody else pop out to you, Jason, in the late rounds that you think might still be available?
Malcolm Brown went in the 12th. I think he's a guy you have to own.
Yeah.
With Gurley, he's not getting as many touches. He didn't look great this week against the Bucks. And you never know if that injury is going to pop up. So I think Malcolm Brown's a good guy to start. Greg Olsen, I've got him in a lot of leagues because, like you did in this league, I punted at tight end a lot. And Greg Olson's been solid. He had a down week this week, but every week so far this year, besides this week, he's been pretty solid for you. George grabbed Preston Williams if you're desperate at wide receiver. He's not a ceiling guy, but he's definitely a floor play. He's getting a lot of targets. He's catching a lot of balls for not a lot of yards, but he'll get you 10 points every week. And short of the John Ross went late.
Yeah, I think people are freaking out because I don't know what he's doing. We're recording during Monday Night Football, so I don't know what he's doing right now. But I think everyone's of the mindset that as soon as A.J. Green comes back, John Ross becomes irrelevant again.
Well, so one thing they mentioned in this broadcast tonight is how much even the verbiage for this team sounds a lot like the Rams verbiage. And I think they'd really like to have a Cooper Kupp, Woods, Cooks kind of situation with these three guys. I think there's going to be, maybe not against the Steelers, but Andy Dalton's played pretty well this season. I think there's enough to go around between the three. And the other thing is every week you think, okay, AJ Green's close, and then you hear another story that he's not going to play next week.
One that stood out to me was Jamal Williams. I know he's injured, but I think as a late round stash, he might be on waivers, especially with the injury last week. They clearly want to have sort of a split workload there. He makes an interesting little stash for later. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't been impressing me for a full game yet. Still hasn't impressed me for 4 quarters. I like him in a half here and there, maybe almost 3 quarters, but that run game is still going to be used a lot. And who's the other guy? Rex. I can't believe Rex Burkhead went so late.
I have another one too.
Who you got?
Demarcus Robinson.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 13th round.
13th round, amazing.
I could see him. He's Tyreek Hill Jr., and once Hill's back, I don't see him going away. I see him overshadowing Sammy Watkins. Watkins looked great, but historically, he's not. He's like one of the most inconsistent wide receivers we've ever seen. Like, tons of talent, just not consistent.
Right.
But there's obviously a connection between DeMarcus and Mahomes. So a 13th round pick for that kind of talent, hell yeah. Like, he went after Philip Dorsett and Cole Beasley, and I love Cole Beasley.
Yeah,
but DeMarcus Robbins could be a number 1 receiver by the end of the year.
Okay.
I have to say this was one of the toughest mock drafts I've ever had to do, though. I mean, there's just scrolling for days to find the guy you wanted.
Right. I mean, and that says a lot too. Like, you maybe got through the first 4 or 5 rounds before you started thinking, crap, all the guys I picked in the 6 to 10 in my original draft panned out or flamed out.
Flamed out, yeah.
So, you're looking at this stuff, and maybe in 4 weeks we'll look at this again and it'll be completely different. But that's what I'm trying to look at those middle rounds where people were getting, bench pieces that they can count on. And those are the guys that I think where you'll find some good consistency. Austin Hooper, Cortland Sutton, I like that pick in the 7th. John Brown is in there as well. Jordan Howard in the 7th. I know he had a big week. What do you make of Jordan Howard? I want to talk about him real quick because he had a big week, and more it looks like I can't pick a Philadelphia running back. I just can't do it.
Well, they said it during the game. Miles Sanders has the abilities and the skills they want as far as the athleticism, but Jordan Howard is just the better running back. And they're hoping that Miles will step up and eventually develop into that running back. But as of right now, he doesn't have the eyes for the field. He's not seeing the holes. Right. Jordan Howard, I feel like people forget, 2 years ago, we were considering him a number 1, like a first-round pick.
Yeah.
Because he was punching people in the face. So this is one of those things where it's like, people are shocked that he did so well, but you shouldn't be. He should have been a starter somewhere. And now it looks like he might be.
So is he like, say you're okay, so what kind of team do you have to have if you want to get Jordan Howard on your squad? Are you a winning team? Are you a middling team? Or are you a losing team? Who's going after Jordan Howard? Any team?
Well, if you're a winning team, you probably have solid running backs. But if you're a losing team, if you're a losing team that is actually a good team, like you just had a couple unlucky weeks, maybe your running backs aren't that consistent, and you don't want to give up too much to make the upgrade, or you don't want to give up too much to take the risk on Jordan Howard. That's the kind of team you are. You're probably 2-2, or maybe 3-1, or you could be 1-3, but like you've lost by 10 points every week.
Yeah,
So, like a decent team. That's where I'd see Jordan Howard. He's one of those guys where you really wouldn't mind taking the risk on it. But at the same time, if I was 0-4 and I had to give up Kelsey, I wouldn't do it for Howard.
yeah, obviously.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the problem with Howard is exactly what we said at the start of this thing, and it's why I kind of agree with you, Steve, that I don't want any part of this backfield. Howard's showing that he has talent in this backfield, but they want Sanders to take the role. So as good as Howard can be, and honestly, I don't think he's all that great. I think he's on a good team with opportunity. But as good as he was this last game, he still got plenty of his touches taken away to Sanders because they want Sanders to be the eventual guy. They drafted him high and they want him to be the guy. So that's why I stay away from these guys. Just like Steve said, it's how do you touch a team that has a guy who's showing that he's the better back currently, but we're going to still force feed it to somebody else because he's going to be the eventual player that we start every week.
Right, and I think we talked about Miles Sanders last week when Draft Genius was on as a guy you want to stash. He, like we said, he's got all the potential in the world and they want him, but he's coming along slower than I think most people expected. So if you're a winning team, maybe buy some Miles Sanders for the playoff push. He's one of those guys that could come on late in the season. Another guy like Devin Singletary or something might come on later in the season as he's battling some injuries. A guy that we thought and I think looks good, who just had a little situation here in Chicago. I want to just talk about the Chicago team a little bit with the injury to Trubisky and now with Chase Daniels at quarterback.
Leave him in the rest of the season.
Okay.
Fuck Trubisky.
But why? Like, to me, it looked like Chase Daniels understood the playbook better.
Because he's a veteran quarterback and he's not afraid. Mitch looks scared. I'm sorry, but like Chase Daniels, I remember when he got brought in, I started laughing. And I was like, oh shit, here it goes, Chase Daniels. And then his first throw to Allen Robinson, and I was like, oh shit, Chase Daniels. Like, if you're going to hang in the pocket and complete your throws and not run around scared, like, Mitch, this is what you're supposed to look like. That's an NFL quarterback. Case Keenum. Bring him in.
All right, so are you feeling better about the Bears' offense now? Because I mean, they've been
100%
tough to trust.
Allen Robinson, I've started every week because he's a great receiver. He's been a middling wide receiver too. And if Mitch is like hurt, and Chase really steps up, this is almost like a Jag situation where everyone really wasn't sure with Nick Foles, and then Nick Foles goes down. And then you get some magic going, and now people are loving the Jags receivers. I think that might happen here. Obviously, Mitch is the future. They want him to be. Chase Daniels is not going to take over long term. But while he's in, if he keeps looking this good, keep starting your Bears players.
Yeah. Does it upgrade guys like Anthony Miller or Trey Burton who haven't done much at all this season so far?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think so. I'm for sure not as high on Chase Daniels as, he came in and played better than Mitch Trubisky, but that was a low bar. I don't know. I mean,
I'm not saying I'm high on them, but what I'm saying is, do I trust them more? Are they upgraded? Is Miller upgraded from nothing, from being a waiver wire spot? Yeah, I'd throw him on it at him. You know what I mean? Allen Robinson is my wide receiver 3. Would he now be my wide receiver 2, possibly 1? Hell yeah. Because that's what you viewed him as before the season, before Mitch was terrible. But now there's a good quarterback there. The bar was low, but the bar has gone up, so everyone should go up. I'm not saying make them all studs, but
we always fall in love when a guy comes in and takes over for a team, mid-game, and he has a decent start. The other team didn't prepare for that style quarterback. They prepared for a guy who could run versus a pocket guy. He might be a little more accurate. He's not as hesitant, but like I said, I don't see it. Miller wasn't bad because Trubisky was bad. Miller was bad because the play calls were bad.
Mhm.
And half the time, Tariq Cohen is in Miller's slot spot. And that's not changing. They're not all of a sudden going to take Cohen and make him the running back and take him off the field. So Miller's just going to continue to be bad because he's going to have no opportunity, because whether Trubisky's the quarterback or Chase Daniel's the quarterback, they're not getting first downs. They're not going to get so.
Hell, bring back Smoking Jay.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
they're not they're not going to get more first downs, so they're going to go 3 and out. They're not going to be on the field long enough to get any of these guys going. The only guy I think you could start is Allen Robinson, and that's because he's talented and he'll get open enough for anybody to throw it to every once in a while. But
Yeah, but that being said, if you look at the way the offensive line, I always bring up the offensive line. That offensive line, like there are certain lines that are built for different things. That line is built for a pocket passer. Mitch hasn't been that. Chase Daniels is. You hang in there. They're going to protect you. They're going to give you a little time. You'll be fine. Mitch is too scared. He's too jumpy. He's not there yet. That being said, like the play calls are wrong because they're trying to work to their quarterback's abilities, but now their quarterback fits the scheme better. And that's why I see it upgraded, because the team flowed better with a pocket quarterback. I'm not saying Chase Daniel's the answer. I'm saying Mitch needs to change up his play style.
I do want to go through some of these teams before we get off this here and wrap the show up. Chris Geckel, I guess that's how you say his name, was nice enough to write me here. So this is the 12 spot, and so this is what he wrote. I asked people what their record was and what their strategy for drafting in this quarter season mock draft. Chris says, I'm currently 3-0. Depending on if Tyler Boyd gets 6 points, I'll be 4-0. And I like upside more than steady performances. Players like DeAndre Hopkins and James Conner, who have been slow to start off the season, to me have a lot of upside because they're the focal points of the offense and will start performing as the season progresses. So, guys, look at Chris's team from the 12 spot here. Just give me a quick rundown. Do you think this team is built for the rest of the season? Is it looking good? Does it follow what he's looking for in terms of slow starts with lots of potential? I think he nailed it. I think he nailed it here.
Yeah, he did. James Conner and Chris Carson. Carson still has a starting job. With Singletary being hurt, you got Frank Gore as your 4th running back, but he can fill in while Singletary's hurt, so you're fine. Todd Gurley is going to pick up steam towards the end of the season, and he's even doing better now, so that's great. Adam Thielen I love. Jarvis Landry's okay. Sterling Shepard, especially when Golden Tate comes back, love it. Kittle, tons of upside. Dak hasn't played a good team yet, but he's looked fantastic. And you have Carlos Hyde in case Duke Johnson gets hurt, or even as a flex. Geronimo Allison should have a big week this week with Adams down. Who knows how much time he'll miss. You have this is a solid team. Like, this is everything. It's a great team.
Yeah, especially picking 12. So Thielen in the 4th is I think we all had short memories here where we all came off this, 1 catch, 1 yard or whatever he had this week, thinking that his stock is down, but he's not going to play the Bears every week. Landry just had a big week and is going to be a target monster. Kittle, like I said earlier, I love him in the 6th round. Huge upside. Sterling Shepard, with Golden Tate out there, he's going to take some of the coverage away from him. It's also going to take some of the targets away. Chris Carson in the 3rd's not bad. Todd Gurley in the 2nd, like he said, it's going to be a later in the season. As long as he stays healthy, that's good. James Conner, yeah, he's an upside play. He hasn't played well up until tonight. Tonight he's playing pretty well. So if the Steelers can turn it around, if Mason Rudolph can look a little better, I really do like this team, especially picking from 12.
Okay, so all these players that we just mentioned here on Chris's team, these are guys. If you're 4-0, 3-1, and you want to start prepping up for the next 4 to 8 to 12 games, whatever, how long your season. Well, it wouldn't be 12, but for rest of season, these are probably some buy lows because he picked guys who have had slow starts, a lot of them with good upside and good potential. So these are buy lows if you want to trade around and try to get some more options for your bench going on. Also, we'll talk about E. Sobar's team real quick. He wrote me as well. aiming for a stable playoff team consistent with upside. So basically what you draft for at the beginning of the year, more or less, I think. Look at Isobar's team. Jason, what do you think of his team in terms of stable playoff team consistent with upside?
Well, I mean, Zeke, obviously, he's got upside all over him. Mark Ingram, week to week, has been pretty good. Last week, he had 3 touchdowns. He's running back 1 right now. Kenny Galladay has been consistent. Emmanuel Sanders has been amazing, especially considering he came off that Achilles tear. Tyrell Williams, like I said earlier, is one of 3 players on the Oakland Raiders, so that's not bad. We talked about Miles Sanders. It's tough, but eventually for the playoffs, they might want him to be the guy. He might by then take it over. John Brown's been a surprise with Allen. I really like Ronald Jones here in the 8th round. He had 90 yards called back due to ticky-tack fouls this week and had 75 yards without him. So they're starting to trust Ronald Jones more, and he's running with some anger in him. He bulked up in the offseason, and he's actually breaking tackles this year. Dawson Knox at tight end, I'm not sold. It's 1 game. So, Jameis Winston's a great quarterback, especially in the 10th round.
I like that a lot. Yeah,
they play a lot of bad defenses coming up. So then they finally have a lot. Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, 2 stud wide receivers. If that running game can take some pressure off them, and that offensive line, which was supposed to be a weakness, really has looked good. Pretty much held Aaron Donald, I believe, to 1 sack and not a lot of pressures. So that offensive line's kind of come into its own. So, and then he's got Deontay Johnson and A.J. Brown as upside guys. Jimmy Graham as a backup. It's a solid team from start to finish.
Yeah. So these are guys.
Even Josh Allen in the end is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, so these are all, like, if you're listening to this player list and you're really struggling, maybe 0-4, 1-3, and you think you got a couple of good core pieces, but you want to grab some more consistent guys, maybe you got too much upside. Look, the price tag is probably going to be pretty high on at least the first 5 or 6 players, maybe even all the way down to John Brown. But it might be worth it to pay a little bit extra to get a Galladay, to get a Sanders, to get a Tyrell Williams, a Mark Ingram, to get you some consistency on your team so that you can get back into it. I think your best value buy on this team, realistically, because if you want to talk about, I like Ronald Jones too, but he just came off a big game, so he's not going to be moved. I think Sanders is probably if you have faith that he's going to be the one going forward, Sanders will be the one to target on this team. And that's Miles Sanders, not Emmanuel, even though I told y'all about Emmanuel. Yeah.
Miles Sanders is the one to target just because everyone else has been so consistent and has already had explosive games. So you already saw the boom so much, especially from Galladay, Williams, Ingram went off already, and Zeke, you're going to pay a king's ransom. But in the 6th round, you drafted Miles Sanders in the 6th, Jones in the 8th. I still think Miles Sanders would probably be easier to get than Jones off this team. So that'd be who I'd target if I was trying to upgrade to help my team with some upside.
Yeah. I agree. I think you could. I mean, if you're I'm trying to find like a running back that you would trade, maybe a carry-on owner, maybe a Derrick Henry owner, maybe a Nick Chubb owner. I mean, he had a huge week. Maybe you can buy Ingram and Sanders. Maybe you can buy Sanders and Galladay. Like if you just want Ingram and Galladay, maybe some consistency. I know Chubb is your main workhorse, but sometimes you got to break that one piece into 2. Just to spread the points out with some upside built in 2 positions rather than 1.
Do we want to discuss my dumpster fire and
Sure.
how I have to do that exactly?
All right, 2-minute drill. Let's talk about Max's team. He sent us the pictures. I threw up in my mouth a little. This is how many teams in this league, Max?
There is 12.
All right, so who we got? We got Matt Stafford at quarterback, Allen Robinson, and the other Robinson from KC as wide receivers, Trey Quinn as a 3rd wide receiver, Elliott, Penny, Kelsey, Hyde, and on the bench, McLaurin. Emmanuel Sanders, Mostert, Williams. Which D. Williams is that? I can't see.
Damian. It's the one who was originally supposed to be the starter.
Okay, so you got Damian Williams, Duke Johnson, and Jay Ajayi, and butt kicker for kicker. All right. So what's your record?
My record is going to be 1-3. And guys, I know Trey Quinn, why is he in? Why is Sanders on the bench? Denver was going against the Jags. The Jags defense has been amazing. I didn't trust Flacco. McLaurin and Sanders are usually always in.
All right.
But with McLaurin hurt, Sanders, I didn't trust that matchup. I had to bench him. Rashad Penny, I didn't know wasn't going to play until an hour before the game, when unfortunately I wasn't near my phone, so I didn't realize that.
Okay.
But I'm looking to probably move Travis Kelce to try to upgrade my running backs because I, like most people, grab Duke Johnson, grab Damian Williams, assuming, hey, Duke, I got him in the 5th round. Steal. He's going to be the starter for Texas. Damian Williams looks fantastic. LaShawn McCoy isn't here yet. I have him stacked at running back with Zeke, Williams, and Duke. Then that all changed. Mm-hmm. And those are literally crippling my team because I punted at wide receiver to acquire the solid running backs.
Right. So
that are no longer solid.
So you're willing to sell Kelce. What did you got anything out there yet? Any trade proposals out there for him?
So I offered one trade proposal. I reached out to my league. Anyone, like, hey, Kelsey's available. I offered for Hawkinson from the Detroit. The gentleman was Hawkinson from Detroit as his only tight end. He has Marlon Mack. So I offered him Duke Johnson and Kelce for Marlon Mack and Hawkinson. He hasn't even looked at the trade yet.
Well, I think that's pretty fair.
I think that's a fair trade in the fact that your tight end has upside, but he's not doing much. My running back's actually more consistent than your tight end. My tight end is the best in the league. Marlon Mack isn't the best running back. But the way I view it is tight ends, unless you have a Kelce, are really a plug and play.
Yeah.
You can just add tight ends, get flyers. There are people coming off suspensions, people getting hurt, yada, yada, yada. So I'm willing to move Kelce. Someone asked if I would trade Ezekiel Elliott to them, and I can't remember who it was for. It might have been for Mixon and then like Chris Thompson. I can't do that.
No.
There isn't enough value there for me to give up Zeke for 2 lesser running backs when realistically Chris Thompson is just Duke Johnson.
Yeah.
So that's an all-around downgrade.
Oh. So
this is a league and it's very rough.
So if you traded Kelce, how low would you go? Like, let's just talk running back because that's where you need stuff. How low would you go running back wise for Kelce? I mean, would you go as low as like
Derrick Henry in a piece?
Yeah, or
I'd do Derrick Henry in a piece.
Would you do Josh Jacobs and somebody?
I wouldn't do Josh Jacobs.
No? Okay.
I don't trust Oakland, but Derrick Henry is being utilized. Tennessee wants to utilize him, so I think he has a very high floor. I don't think his ceiling is necessarily crazy high, but I don't think he's going to ever hurt me.
You talked a lot about Devonta Freeman. Would you trade for Devonta Freeman with Kelce and something else?
I would need a nice something else. Because as much as I do like Devonta Freeman, I think he's solid. That's why I'd say go after him. Kelce is a 2nd-round pick. Devonta Freeman's a 4th. He's just a he's a 4th who's giving you 4th-round production, which people like act like that's good. 4th-round production is good.
Yeah,
but it's not 2nd-round production. So if you were going to give me Devonta Freeman,
LaShawn McCoy,
and yeah, I do that.
Okay. So, I mean...
Both of them?
Yeah.
Or just...
No,
yeah,
both.
I live LaShawn McCoy and Devonta Freeman, I'd do that.
Okay. All right.
Well, so I have a... So, pulling it up, I'm trying to find it. Where is Kelce? Because he's a 2nd-round pick, but we're in the 5th week now. Or we're about to be in the 5th week. So, where you drafted him should be irrelevant at this point. That's kind of what...
Where I drafted him, he's the 46th ranked player in the NFL.
But as far as tight ends, where is he?
So, yeah, all right. So, he's 4th. You got Andrews, Hooper, and Ingram above him. But realistically, Andrews and Hooper and Ingram, like, you get Andrews and Hooper.
Oh, yeah, for PPR. You're
just
right.
don't go after those guys. Like, don't go after that team.
So I think the problem though is, and I think that's part of what. So part of the exercise for what we just did is at this point in the season, look how differently we drafted versus how we drafted just a couple weeks ago or a month ago. Like Kelsey was a second round pick, but being the third or fourth tight end, is he still a second round pick? I don't think he
Yes.
is.
You also got to think, though, so Kelsey went in the third round in your mock draft. He was still the first tight end taken. Why? Because the history is there.
Well,
he's
it's not the
fourth.
history; it's the team he's on.
I will, yes, but
He
in the
also
history
hasn't cut
too.
he also hasn't cut many touchdowns this year. So that's I mean Zach
Well,
Ertz went in the third round too, but
he had a touchdown called back last week. And that being said, he's as far as rank goes, behind Evan Ingram, he's literally one touchdown and a PPR away.
yeah.
Behind. So if that touchdown this week didn't get called back, he would be the number one tight end.
I just think we have to be careful. And again, he was going late first round in some mock drafts in some drafts before the season, second round for sure. He slipped to 3-3 here because there have been tight ends that are producing at a higher rate than you expected them to. Will Disley's a guy. There's a lot of guys that have performed week to week that make you maybe devalue some of those higher end tight ends.
Oh, which I fully understand. And
So-
like that, but that being said, like that's why I said tight end I'll take a flyer on because there are guys who will perform. Because I mean, if we look, so I'm looking to get a running back for Kelsey. If we go to the running backs right now, the number 2 running back in the NFL is Austin Eckler. The number 4 is Nick Chubb. Mark Ingram is number 6. I do not expect Eckler or Ingram to finish in those respective spots at all. Ezekiel Elliott is the 11th best running back in the league. So it's one of those, yes, the stat line wise, but it's not like an Eckler. Like Eckler just lost his job. Would I take him? Not straight up. But if you did Eckler and something else, I would take him for Kelsey because I still think Eckler has a role. But the thing is, the point differential between Kelsey and the number 1, so I'm in a full point PPR. The number 1 tight end, Evan Ingram, is 72.10 points. Kelsey is 66.9 points. That's literally, like I said, the called back touchdown. Now, between Ingram, Hooper, and Andrews, and Kelsey, who do I think is going to put up the most points team-wise, which would give Kelsey, give their tight end the best chance of scoring because they're going to have the most points? It's still going to be Kansas City. And who's the most talented tight end in the NFL? It's still Travis Kelsey. So the upside's still there. When a player is averaging 15 points a week for you or more, it doesn't really matter at that point what position they play besides quarterback, because that's kind of bad for quarterback. 15 points is solid. And especially if you're someone who's tight end, maybe you drafted Hunter Henry and he got hurt, or maybe you drafted Olsen's actually not having a bad year, but maybe you drafted Ebron and Ebron's not doing well. I'd be the one to trade you. Give me Ebron and Marlon Mack. I'll give you Duke Johnson and Kelsey, and I'll drop Ebron and go pick up Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, like I said, I find it hard to trade running backs, which are scarce, for a tight end, even Kelsey at this point.
But would you trade Travis Kelsey for Marlon Mack?
I want Mack. Yeah, I want Mack in that trade. What is he right now? And
he's the 17th running back.
That can't be right because he was a lot higher than that coming in this week. I know he got hurt this week, so he didn't play much.
He's the 17th as far as points go. He's tied in points in a full point PPR. He's tied in points with Le'Veon Bell, who had a bye week, but he's the 17th running back. LaShawn McCoy's higher, Carson's higher, Gurley, Phillip, Aaron Jones, and then the normal guys are all higher than him.
I'm still taking Mack over Kelsey, but.
Yeah, and I have a team where I have been streaming tight end, and it's cost me. It's cost me because I'm not good at picking them. So to get maybe the best tight end in the game would really help. And I have a lot of running back depth on that team. So I mean, I would offer my 3 and 4 running back maybe, or one some combination of which would be Devonta Freeman. Josh Jacobs is in the question. Eckler's there. Aaron Jones is there. All those guys, I could move all those guys.
There's a lot of people like me right now. There's a lot of people who drafted Duke and Damian. And I know there is. And there's a lot of people who did that and have a piece they're trying to move. And having a higher up piece because they reached for Hopkins. They didn't reach, but they grabbed Hopkins. They grabbed Julio in a stud running back, and they sat and waited for Damian and Duke.
Yeah.
And now they're hurting. Right. So they're looking to move that piece. And this is really showing you, like, hey, Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the NFL. What could you get for him? How are you viewing how trades work?
Yeah, so getting to it, the reason I don't trade Marlon Mack is because he's the sole guy there, and there's nobody really that's going to chase him around and take that job. He's 15th after he barely played in a game. So he didn't have his bye, but he got hurt early. Who do I trade? Kelce? Yeah, I mean, Phillip Lindsay is ranked up there. Aaron Jones is up there. I'd give up Aaron Jones and Phillip Lindsay for Kelce, or at least one of those pieces and a wide receiver.
I would too. I'd be happy to move either one of those guys.
So those guys that are murky, their jobs. Aaron Jones is the guy there, but the guy is still, that guy's still only getting 50%. He looked really inefficient, even though he got a touchdown this last week. But he hit 21 yards, I think, on 17 carries, something along those lines. Like he didn't look great. So
what if I came to you and I said, hey, you're starting Jimmy Graham. He had a good week this week, but we both know he's not consistent, and he stubbed his toe and he's hurt. I have Travis Kelce. You have Leonard Fournette and Cole Beasley. Would you make that trade?
I can't give up Leonard Fournette because especially after this week.
But he's had one good week and he's been bad for 2 years.
Well, and again, it's PPR, so bad is relevant. If we're talking, he scored 2 weeks ago. He was bad for the NFL. He had 69 yards with 66 yards with a 69-yard run, which means he had negative rushing yards going into that. He still had that long rushing touchdown, and then he also had 6 receptions, 8 receptions for however many. He ended up with 17 points that week on a bad week.
Would you do it straight up if it was just Fournette and Kelce and you had running back depth? Because Fournette would probably be your third running back.
Yeah, I mean, with running back depth, I might do it. Cole Beasley, to me, doesn't add much one way or the other. He's a
waiver wire ad.
He's a waiver wire guy, so he wasn't the guy holding it back. So I think this boils down to it's up to your team makeup. If Leonard Fournette's my third running back, then sure. If I have a Nick Chubb I grabbed first, and I have Derrick Henry as well, and Leonard Fournette's there too. Like I have no problem getting rid of Leonard Fournette in that situation, but I don't think there's not a lot of people in where Leonard Fournette is their third running back.
Yeah.
So
I would sell, would you take Chris Carson and maybe like James White, or Chris Carson and
See, I'd do that in the sole fact that
Howard.
Seattle desperately wants Chris Carson to be their starter.
See, that's
and
a team
James
I want.
White is a good flex.
I want to get out of Seattle's running team.
But that's the thing. With me in the current situation, or
Yeah.
I am in the situation that people who have Damian and Duke might be in, you need that guy who's going to get fed the ball. Yeah. I don't like Seattle's backfield either, but they want Chris Carson. It's like a Miles Sanders thing.
Yeah.
They want him to be the starter. They're going to keep feeding him for as long as they can. So with that, there is a floor. So I go from having no running back to having a running back with boom potential and an okay floor. And then you're going to throw in someone else on the side. I'd consider that James White, who is, in PPR especially, is a really nice flex to have. Yeah. He's an upgraded Chris Thompson.
Yeah. All right, guys. So there you go. Mock draft, quarter way through the season. Very interesting stuff here. Keep in touch with us. We talk some trade stuff here at the end of the show, but everybody's situation is different. You could be the 4-0 team. You could be the 0-4 team. We want to help you no matter what your record is. So reach us at these following places. On the Sleeper app, join the Sleeper Wire channel. On Facebook, you can go to groups. Fantasy Football, Sleeper Wire Fantasy Football Club. You can also listen to our show coming up Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we do a live show called The Mail Sack. where you can call in and ask us questions. Also send us questions through the Sleeper app. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Sleeper Wire Show. If you'd like to reach Max and you like the way he thinks about football, he's on the Sleeper app at SWMax and MaxSW on Twitter, maybe. I don't know. And Jason is on the Sleeper app at BFTG Dr. Mill, DRMIL. And I'm sorry, that's on Sleeper. And on Twitter at FLD Dr. Milbarge, MILBARGE. That's DR Doctor. Let me just spell it for you. FLDR MILBARGE. I am producer Steve. You can find me on Sleeper app at SWSteve and at Twitter. I am at Toledo Radio. We want to talk to you guys. So we'll be back next week with more trends. 5 weeks of information. Oh, don't forget, bye weeks this week. Detroit Lions and Miami Dolphins are off. And week 6, Bills, Bears, Colts, and Raiders. So prepare yourself for bye weeks coming up. We'll talk about that next Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in. You know how to reach us. We'll reach you guys next week. Good luck in week 5.